Back in the 90s and early 2000s, Japan built sedans that looked like commuter cars. But some could smoke a sports coupe at a red light. One of these humble rides, it once outran a Porsche with groceries in the trunk. Let's get into it. Number 12, Toyota Verasa VR25. You'd think we were winding down with this one. A sedan so strange looking, people used to confuse it with a Corolla that got dressed in the dark. But behind its awkward face was a street weapon few saw coming. The Toyota Verasa VR25 was meant to replace the Chaser, Cresta, and Mark II, three icons of understated muscle. Instead, it rolled in with an identity crisis. Too round for the tuners, too loud for the salarymen. But under that soft jelly bean shell, a monster waited. Under the hood, a 2.5-liter turbocharged 1JZ GTE inline 6, the same engine that made the Chaser Tourer 5 a backroad legend. It pushed out 276 horsepower and 278 pound-feet of torque. Routed to the rear wheels through a 5-speed manual or automatic, depending on how brave you were. Despite its portly shape, it could launch from 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 6.0 seconds. Not blistering, but fast enough to leave newer cars blinking in disbelief. So why didn't it take off? For one, that styling. The front end split car communities in two. Some called it bold, others just called it ugly. And while the chassis was solid, its weight and vague steering didn't scream track day material. But it wasn't built to win beauty contests. It was built to slip past attention and still throw down when it mattered. And as more of them disappear into scrapyards or private collections, the few that remain, they're being quietly rediscovered by people who know what it really is. And if you think this one's strange, wait till you see the next. It makes the Verasa look like a Ferrari. Number 11, Nissan Gloria Gran Turismo Ultima Y33. If you saw this parked outside a golf course or gently cruising down a Tokyo side street, you'd probably guess it was just another overfed luxury barge for a retired CEO. But blink, and this thing might just leave your sports sedan gasping for air. The Nissan Gloria Gran Turismo Ultima Y33 wore its intentions like a three-piece suit, classy, reserved, and absolutely misleading. At a glance, it looked more concerned with comfort than cornering. But tucked behind that wood-grain-trimmed interior and silent ride was a surprise that made it anything but forgettable. Underneath the hood sat the VQ30DET, a turbocharged 3.0-liter V6 that belted out 270 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque. That's the same engine lineage that would go on to power Nissan's 350Z and Infiniti G35. Only here, it was cloaked in silence and wrapped in leather. Paired with a smooth shifting automatic and rear-wheel drive, it could glide to 60 miles per hour in around 6.5 seconds, faster than almost anything else in its class at the time. But performance wasn't the only thing it hid well. Its suspension setup, while tuned for comfort, held firm enough to carve through highways with ease, and the steering, surprisingly direct, made it feel far more athletic than its sleepy appearance let on. Still, it had its flaws. It was heavy, over 3,700 pounds heavy. And while the turbo engine was a gem, the transmission could sometimes feel sluggish, robbing it of sharper response. But that was the genius. This car didn't try to be loud or proud. It lulled you into underestimating it until the boost kicked in. And coming up next is a sedan even fewer people have heard of. Its body says economy, but its engine tells a completely different story. Number 10, Honda Ascot Innova. It looked like it belonged in a university parking lot, unassuming, boxy, and polite to a fault. But this next one had a wild side hiding just beneath that buttoned-up exterior. Meet the Honda Ascot Innova, a car with zero aggressive lines, no flashy trim, and not even the faintest hint of speed. It came off as just another budget-friendly midsizer built for the daily grind. But here's where things start to twist. This wasn't your average front-wheel drive commuter. Unlike most Hondas of its time, the Ascot Innova used a longitudinally mounted engine, giving it better balance and weight distribution, traits usually reserved for performance sedans. But it's what Honda stuffed under the hood that makes this car so quietly savage. the H22A 2.2-liter DOHC VTEC engine. That's right, the same high-revving power plant used in the Prelude SIR. It cranked out 187 horsepower and 153 pound-feet of torque, which may not sound earth-shattering, but paired with a lightweight chassis and a slick 5-speed manual, it could hit 0 to 60 miles per hour in just under 7 seconds. And thanks to its VTEC system, it didn't really wake up until after 5,500 RPM, meaning the second half of the tach was where the magic happened. But here's the catch. The Innova didn't know what it wanted to be. It had sports sedan bones, but a conservative suit. It was too agile for the family crowd, too vanilla for the tuners, and never officially exported outside Japan. That awkward positioning meant most people never gave it a second glance, and Honda didn't give it much of a future either. Yet today, those who know, they're chasing it down, because it's one of the cleanest blends of stealth and VTEC fury ever built. And if this surprised you, the next one doesn't even use conventional tech. It bends the rules of combustion itself. Number 9, Mazda Millennia S, Mazda Zetos 9 in Japan. On the outside, it was pure executive calm, a sleek, chrome-touched sedan meant to ferry white-collar workers between meetings and dinner reservations. But underneath the hood, Mazda was quietly running an experiment no one saw coming. The Mazda Millennia S, sold in Japan as the Mazda Zetos 9, was supposed to be Mazda's answer to European luxury. But instead of mimicking BMW or Mercedes, they did something no one else dared. They built a Miller cycle engine. Wait, Miller cycle? Not turbo, not supercharged in the traditional sense. This 2.3-liter V6 used an unusual form of forced induction with a belt-driven supercharger and delayed intake valve timing, squeezing out 217 horsepower and 210 pound-feet of torque. It wasn't just clever, it was ahead of its time, delivering V6 power with fuel economy closer to a 4-cylinder. And here's what made it even more absurd. Despite all that tech, it didn't look fast. It didn't even sound fast. It wafted, glided, and purred like a Lexus, yet it could run 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 7.5 seconds, thanks to its lightweight frame and smart gearing. Quiet, fast, efficient. Nobody knew what hit them, but all that innovation came with a price. The engine was complex and didn't love being maintained by the average shop. And with Mazda never fully explaining what the Miller cycle was, the public didn't exactly line up to buy it. Sales lagged. The experiment faded. Still, today, it's a goldmine for those who want uniqueness without screaming about it. It's weird, it's elegant, and it'll spook you if you try to race it off a light. And if you're into obscure engineering brilliance like this, you'll love what's still to come. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the rest of these forgotten beasts, because the next one, it's got rally blood and a poker face. Number 8, Subaru Legacy B4 RSK BE5. It looked like a car your uncle would buy new, drive for 20 years and never once push past the speed limit. 4 doors, plain silver paint, and 0 visual drama. But hiding beneath that middle manager vibe was a machine that could throw hands with proper performance cars and win. This was the Subaru Legacy B4 RSK BE5. A name that sounds more like a printer model than a performance sedan. But don't let that fool you. Under its modest hood sat a twin turbocharged 2.0-liter EJ20H Flat 4, pushing out 276 horsepower and 268 pound-feet of torque, sent to all 4 wheels through Subaru's legendary symmetrical AWD system. With a crisp 5-speed manual available, it could launch to 60 miles per hour in around 5.7 seconds in a family car. But this wasn't just fast in a straight line. The B4 RSK was agile, planted, and shockingly responsive. It had real rally DNA baked into its chassis, refined enough for daily driving, but brutal when asked to perform. In the sequential twin-turbo setup, it delivered low-end torque and high RPM pull in a way that made it feel far larger than 2.0 liters. Still, it had quirks. That twin-turbo system was complex, and the transition between the primary and secondary turbo wasn't exactly seamless, what many called the turbo dip. And unless you were deep into the JDM scene, the Legacy name didn't scream performance. So here's the question. Can a car look this safe and still earn street cred? Or does it need wings and vents to be taken seriously? Drop a comment and let me know. Next up, we're not just going fast. We're talking drift lore status. And yet, most people still think it's just a boring commuter from the 90s. Number 7. Toyota Chaser Tourer V JZX100. If you spotted one of these rolling up quietly at a traffic light, you'd probably dismiss it as just another 90s Toyota built for long commutes and not much else. The design? Boxy, conservative, barely a curve in sight, but under that tame silhouette was a powertrain that turned it into an underground icon. The Toyota Chaser Tourer CV JZX100 wasn't meant to make noise, visually at least. It shared its bones with the Cresta and Mark II, part of a trio of sedans designed for businessmen who like their cars low-key. But the Chaser, especially in the Tourer 5th trim, came with a very different agenda. Lurking beneath the hood was the legendary one JZGTE, a 2.5-liter turbocharged inline-6 pumping out 276 horsepower and 268 pound-feet of torque delivered to the rear wheels. And if you had the manual version, you were holding on to a genuine street weapon. It could sprint to 60 miles per hour in around 5.5 seconds, but it wasn't just about straight-line speed. With a balanced chassis, near-perfect weight distribution, and a stiff suspension setup, it was equally comfortable lighting up tires sideways. What set the Chaser apart wasn't just the power, it was how discreet it all felt. This was a car you could park at a wedding or a boardroom, and no one would give it a second glance. Yet at midnight, it might be eating up corners in an illegal twos run or sliding through an industrial park. The only drawback? Its rising cult status. What was once a hidden gem is now getting harder and pricier to find stock. But for those lucky enough to get behind the wheel before the hype, it was the perfect blend of sleeper style and sideways madness. And the car that comes next, it ditches style altogether for something built to dominate in silence. Number 6. Mitsubishi Galant VR4 8th Gen JDM. Blink and you'd miss it. Just another 90s family sedan parked outside a corner store or cruising quietly through suburban streets. No flares, no wild body kits, no hint of attitude. But under the surface, it was engineered to embarrass far more expensive machines without ever breaking a sweat. This was the 8th generation Mitsubishi Galant VR4, the last generation to carry the badge that once shared the DNA of Mitsubishi's rally heritage. And even though it looked like it belonged in a PTA meeting, this thing was secretly a weapon. Under the hood sat a 2.5-liter twin turbocharged V6 that produced 276 horsepower and a torque-rich 268 pound-feet sent through Mitsubishi's advanced AWD system, the same core philosophy that powered their Evo line. Acceleration? It could hit 0 to 60 in around 5.3 seconds. Not supercar fast, but fast enough to keep up with much flashier, louder rivals. More importantly, it was stable, planted and soaked up corners like a touring car, thanks to a multi-link suspension setup that made it feel tighter than it had any right to be. But it wasn't perfect. The twin-turbo system, while potent, could be temperamental. Parts support was limited even when it was new, and it never officially left Japan. So outside of gray imports, it's a rare find. Plus, most people just overlooked it, which was exactly the point. Because while other sedans screamed for attention, this one kept its voice low and let the numbers do the talking. No one saw it coming, and by the time they did, it was already gone. What's next? A car so clean-cut it could have passed as a school principal's ride, if not for the turbocharged secret under the hood. Number 5. Nissan Sapphiro A31. It looked like something your uncle might have driven to work in 1992. Square proportions, upright stance, no drama, no flash. Just another Japanese family sedan doing its job. But the truth is, this car had no business being that fast. The Nissan Sapphiro. A 31 was introduced in the late 80s as a premium mid-size sedan, meant to slot between the Skyline and Laurel. It was well-appointed, quiet, and thoroughly unassuming. But Nissan, in a moment of brilliance, gave it one thing that completely rewrote its identity: the RB20D ET. That's right, a 2.0-liter turbocharged inline-6, rear-wheel drive, and a chassis shared with the R32 Skyline. The result? A full-sized luxury-adjacent sleeper with over 200 horsepower and just enough torque, around 195 pound-feet, to make the rear end come alive. What made the A31 so special wasn't raw numbers, it was the platform's modding potential. Underneath that mild-mannered shell was one of Nissan's best-kept secrets, an ideal drift chassis, lightweight, balanced, and responsive. It quickly became a darling in underground motorsport circles, especially in Japan and New Zealand, where it was reborn as a budget drift monster. But in stock form, it was still quick, 0 to 60 in under 7 seconds, plenty respectable for a four-door from the era. Yet nothing about it shouted performance. No wild spoiler, no aggressive bumper, not even a badge to hint at its turbo hard. Just 4 doors, clean lines, and a whole lot of potential. Its flaw? Time. These cars were driven hard, modified harder, and now finding a clean one is like spotting a ghost. Most people never noticed them then, and that's exactly why they're legendary now. Coming up next, a sedan that stayed under the radar for decades, but could quietly dust cars double its price. Number 3, Toyota Aristo V300 JZS 161. From a distance, it looked like a well-mannered executive sedan, boardroom-friendly design, polished paint, and a silhouette that whispered reliability. But behind that polite exterior was an engine with a global reputation for domination. The Toyota Aristo 300 JZS 161, sold overseas as the Lexus GS 300, came equipped with something no luxury buyer asked for, but every car nerd dreamed of, the 2JZ GTE. Yes, that 3.0-liter twin, turbo inline-6, 276 horsepower, 332 pound-feet of torque, and a tuning ceiling that's become legendary. All tucked inside a car that looked more ready for a business meeting than a burnout. This wasn't Toyota just being quirky. This was quiet engineering madness. The JZS 161 had double wishbone suspension, an available Tiptronic automatic, and a chassis that could dance if you asked nicely. And while it was electronically limited to 180 kilometers per hour in Japan, removing the limiter turned it into an Autobahn missile. It could pull 0 to 60 in the mid-5-second range, which for a heavy luxury car in the late 90s was borderline absurd. And yet, no aggressive body kit, no giant rear wing, no flashy badging, just a silent killer in a tailored suit. Its Achilles heel? Weight. At over 3,700 pounds, it wasn't the nimblest thing in corners, but pointed in a straight line, and even some modern sports cars would get nervous. More than just a fast Toyota, the Aristo V300 is proof that true performance doesn't need to shout. It just needs to show up and win quietly. If you're loving these underrated monsters, hit that subscribe button. More hidden legends are coming up next. Number 2, Nissan Laurel Metalist Turbo C34 C35. You'd spot one in traffic and barely glance. Just another aging Nissan sedan rolling by. Its shape more appliance than adrenaline. But under the hood, something far more serious lurked. The Nissan Laurel Metalist Turbo, especially in its C34 and C35 generations, was the ultimate definition of blink and you'll miss it. Built on the same platform as the Skyline, the Laurel looked every bit the conservative commuter. Boxy, businesslike, and quiet. But Nissan wasn't content with keeping it boring, so they dropped in RB Series turbocharged engines. Yes, that family of power plants. The C34 offered the RB25DET, a 2.5-liter inline-6 turbo, putting out 250 horsepower and around 235 pound-feet of torque. The later C35 facelift continued the trend, refined it, and gave the Laurel one last punch before the badge disappeared into history. Paired with a manual transmission, rare but out there, and rear-wheel drive, this was a factory sleeper in every sense of the word. Zero flash, no aggressive aero, no hint at what it could do unless you knew where to look. And yet it could launch from 0 to 60 in the low 6-second range, leaving plenty of sports cars and egos behind. Its biggest limitation wasn't speed, but identity. It sat between the Skyline's spotlight and the Cedric's luxury, never fully claiming fame in either camp. But maybe that's what made it so perfect: invisibility as an advantage. With the right tune, these cars become unassuming monsters. Stock or modded, they've earned their place among Japan's quiet killers.
Number 1. Mazda Familia Infiniti Sedan, BFMR.
It looked like something your uncle might have driven to the hardware store. Boxy, plain, almost stubbornly forgettable. But this tidy little sedan had no business being as quick or as capable as it was. Meet the Mazda Familia Infiniti Sedan, BFMR. A car most people outside Japan have never even heard of. Born in the late 80s and wrapped in compact economy sedan skin, it was Mazda's way of slipping some real mischief into the most unassuming package possible. What set it apart? A 1.6-liter DOHC turbocharged inline-4, known as the B6T. Not just any small motor, this one churned out 140 to 150 horsepower, depending on the trim, and a punchy 136 pound-feet of torque, all routed to all four wheels. Yeah, this thing had full-time AWD, rally-inspired DNA, and weighed under 2,500 pounds. That meant 0 to 60 came up in the low 70s, and with a few tweaks, you could easily shave that down further. In an era when many compacts struggled to feel alive, the BFMR felt wired: tight steering, crisp gearbox, and a drivetrain that begged to be pushed. And yet, outside of a subtle rear badge and factory alloys, there was almost nothing to give it away. No flares, no scoops, no wild graphics. It wore its speed like a disguise. The biggest drawback? Rarity. Even in Japan, they weren't mass-produced. And clean examples today are unicorn-level scarce. But if you ever catch one on the street, respect it. That quiet little Mazda might just be the fastest thing in the lot, and you'll never see it coming.